that are absolutely needed to be unclogged. So we're going to translate Hod as surrender or acceptance or yielding to, and then ultimately it's going to grow into cooperation and integration. Let's not forget that Hod on the Sphera chart, if you want to refer to it on the handout, that the parallel energy from the top of the Sphera chart, the parallel energy of Hod, which is here, the parallel energy in ascending form, it is inextricably interconnected to the Sphera energy center on top of Hod, which is Gevura. So we have Gevura, which is restraint, and immediately below it is Hod, which is surrender. Do you see the connection between restraint and surrender? So Hod points to the inclination to withdraw or to yield. So let's start on a very physical level. In every complex organism, there are specialty cells. In our let's talk about our bodies. There are specialty cells. Each type of cell in our bodies, think of it for a moment in an organic manner. Each specialty cell is, so to speak, willing to become dependent on the other cell. Our cells work together in holistic cooperation. The moment you have a cell not, so to speak, and I'm just dummying it down, the moment you have a cell not cooperating, not speaking to the other cell, what is that?
Cancer.
That's cancer.
They go out of control.
That's cancer. I am unwilling to cooperate. I am unwilling to yield to, this cell is unwilling to yield to the other cell, and they're not talking and they're not getting together. That's not good. Okay, so if you look at it, if you look at the word surrender in that case, surrender becomes vital, right? Each cell is surrendering in one aspect or another to the other cell, and produces a cooperation which creates a holistic kind of existence. That's Hod. So Hod is the ability, is our ability to respond and to yield to the presence of others that come into our environment. Hopefully I meet another person for the first time, and we exercise immediately a certain amount of Hod, depending on who you are, depending on how healthy your Hod is. I either meet a person for the first time and I put up an immediate, for whatever reason, an immediate barrier of resistance. I meet the person, and the wall goes up, and right?
Yeah.
My Hod is not working in that case. I welcome you into my world. I start listening to you, like really listening, and I start receiving from you. My Hod is good and healthy. So, in the human being, friends, our relationship to God and to others, which means, others means the larger collective, right? Myself vis-a-vis you personally, or you as a collective. Hod expresses itself in the impulse to, I'm going to use another word that I hope you don't get wrong. It requires a little tweaking. Hod expresses itself in the impulse to sacrifice. I'm going to use that word. Do you see a correlation between the word sacrifice and surrender?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Hod, on a cosmic level, on a divine level, and this is important, Hod represents our human attempt to imitate the divine. In what way? Imitate the divine in what way? In the way of divine tzimtzum. Divine tzimtzum. You have heard this word.
Heard that word.
Tzimtzum means, long story short, we did this.
It's in the notes.
It's in the.
It goes back to Keter.
It's in the notes.
On page 2.
Tzimtzum is one of the fundamental words which tries to describe the created world a millisecond before it's created. Everything is God before creation, correct?
Yes.
There's only God. There's only God presence. And there is nothing else but divine presence. remember the analogy I gave with a balloon. You blow up a balloon in this room until there is no room left, right? But that balloon. So the world is filled with God presence. And the fundamental question of Jewish mysticism is how is anything created within that space? There's no room for anything else but divine presence. So, long story short, the mystics describe a process where the divine presence constricts itself. It sucks a little bit of its own self out of the
Itself.
space to leave room open for creation. And that's how Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God creates. That whole process of creation takes place because the divine presence sucked some of its presence out of the space to leave room open for creation. Creation meaning something outside of Keter. Something outside of Keter.
Oh,
So in Hod, what we do in terms of the energy of surrender and sacrifice, we imitate the divine Tzimtzum. In other words, what we do in imitating the divine constriction is we sacrifice or surrender some of our self for the sake of entering into relationship with other.
with other.
The I has to surrender a little bit of the I, of the self, in order to leave room open to receive you into me.
Okay.
There's a certain aspect of surrendering, which is a good thing. It's not surrendering.
You can't pour
It's
more.
not, it's not making a schmata out of myself. It's rather opening up a window, a door, so I leave room open for you in me.
You can't put more water in an already full cup.
Right, yes.
Would you say that this is a symbiotic relationship?
Yeah, that's the beginning process of a symbiotic relationship.
So even if you surrender, I'm thinking about that bird that sits on top of hippopotamuses and eats their bugs, so they're happy, and the hippos are happy, or the rhinoceros or whatever. So even in that symbiotic relationship, all right, that bird can only go where that animal takes it. So it surrenders, I'll go where you're going because I'm getting food off of you and I'm keeping the insects off of you, which is making you happy. So even if you do surrender,
Getting
it
something.
doesn't have to be a piece of yourself, it could be different levels of
It's not necessarily a piece of yourself. It's an opening up of space in order to
willingness.
be able to receive.
Right.
Okay, Shabri?
So you said something about outside of Katir. to receive something outside of Keter.
Keter.
Keter. So for me, it's like an understanding that you're not getting anything outside of Keter. You're getting Keter. You're receiving
Yes.
from Keter.
Yeah.
In the wholeness of Keter, it might make the balloon smaller and there's room for creation, but that creation is only Keter.
Yes, yes, yes.
There's nothing else but Keter. Even us walking around as human beings is only Keter, but it's not fully understanding that yet. Or it might be understanding it yet, but we don't live our lives like that because of our minds. I don't know, but that's what's going on in my head.
Without understanding, without the understanding that everything is ultimately a product of Keter, or is coming from Keter, without that understanding, it's as if it actually is separate.
Yes.
In our minds.
Yes.
Okay, so it depends if one is making the connection.
Yes, or understanding it.
Yeah,
Having greater
it depends on
understanding.
the level of understanding.
Then you said something about sacrifice and I'm thinking that in order to sacrifice, have to connect with a certain amount of discernment.
Okay. We're gonna get to sacrifice in a sec, yes.
I can't help but feel, I go back to Sigmund Freud again too, because I think we have to maintain what we truly believe is moral and right and humanitarian. You can forgive others for their blindness, they can have a high IQ and still be killers, right? But when you understand them, you haven't given up on your moral devotion to your truth. You're willing to sacrifice for your truth, understanding them, but not giving up what you truly believe. And that's why I so admire Sigmund Freud for his, no matter what was happening to him, the murders that were going on during the Holocaust, his loved ones taken to death camps, right? And what did he do? He stepped back to understand why they behaved that way and tried to develop a psychological way or a science of dealing with the madness that rules mankind without ever giving up what was in his heart, his soul, and his advanced understanding. He was getting an aerial view of what was going on around him, but it didn't stop him.
That's not a bad idea, that enlightened people like Freud exercise this attribute of Hod, of surrendering as a way to survive. It's not a bad example. It's not a bad example. People of high enlightenment, if they don't exercise a little surrender and sacrifice, they can become egotistical dictators in their own right if there is not this sense of surrender. So when we speak of surrender and and sacrifice, imitating the divine constriction, it is not surprising that in the Torah and in general ancient history, across the board, there was this idea in all ancient civilizations of this is very primary, and we have evolved from that. But there is this commonality, it's universal, that in ancient civilization there was this idea of sacrificing animals for to the gods. Very primary, but that is where the seed of this ability, this attribute to be able to surrender one's self to someone or something else, our human ability to surrender.
I don't think there was any discernment there.
So,
Rabbi,
no, this is a primary attribute manifested in an ancient psychological manner. This is how sacrifices came into being. And
Karban, the root word in Hebrew for sacrifice means to draw near.
right,
So it's an act that is being done for the sake of karav.
of entering into relationship with. Kim is correct. Karban is the Hebrew word for sacrifice, and the etymological root of karban comes from the word karov, which means to come close to.
Completely different than emotion.
Yeah, to come close to.
Right.
That means I'm leaving room open, I'm creating a vacuum, I'm constricting myself to leave room open for relationship, to come close to other. Yes.
But what seemed to have gotten lost in the real meaning of the sacrifice is that you're sacrificing the animal instincts within the human being.
Yes.
It was symbolic through the sacrifice of the bestial, the animal, your lower nature,
Yes. Yeah.
and your 1,000 desires, and
Yes,
all these
yes.
things that are in the way of really making the connection, because all of that has to be put away.
Right.
It has to be, as you said, withdrawn in order to make the connection. So
Right.
the real symbolism is the end of your own animal instincts beyond your human instincts.
Yes, we're gonna get into animal instincts. That's good. That's good. Okay. So surrender, you can substitute to leave room open is synonymous to surrender. Surrender means to leave room open for something or someone. So biblically, the biblical personality most closely associated with Hod is Aaron, is Moses' brother. So we have Moses representing what? We did it last week? Netzach. Aaron, his brother, represents Hod. And it's no coincidence that Aaron is the high priest, which means he is the chief sacrificer. In those days when symbolically this energy of Hod, of surrender, was represented by animal sacrifice, there were many Kohanim, there were many priests. Who was the head honcho priest? Aaron, which makes Aaron the chief sacrificer. He represented the energy of, he was the chief surrender. He was the symbol of surrender. And it's no coincidence that Aaron is also known as, in his own lifetime, as the chief peacemaker. So if you go through the biblical narrative, when Moses leaves the scene, when does he leave the scene? For a little while? He went mountain climbing.
Yes.
He went God climbing. Aaron is left with an unruly,
Yes.
undisciplined, slave mentality nation who just got out of Egypt, and they are in, I would say, in total psychological and emotional trauma, and their leader disappears for 40 days and 40 nights, and they are beyond themselves. They don't know what is going to happen. And poor Aaron, and because of their very primary ways of thinking, they build a golden calf just to soothe their fears. And Aaron is the one that has to create reconciliation, peace. He has to get this cell talking and integrating with the other cell. He has to create peace between the nation and Moses and God and the golden calf. He somehow is in a chaotic situation as a leader, and he is known as the great reconciler, the great peacemaker. And that is all coming from the energy zone of Hod. Aaron is the one who taps in to the realms of mutual cooperation and is the one who is responsible for creating harmony. While Moses comes down and smashes the tablets on the heads of the people because he is Netzach, Aaron is the one who speaks to the people and calms the people down and creates harmony out of conflict. In the place of strife and separation, Aaron taps into the energy of Hod, constricts himself and constricts, as was said before, constricts a little bit of self in order to have communication and allow the people to have their voice, and he is able to create peace instead of strife, instead of conflict. Symbolically, Chana, biblically speaking, is also the representative of Hod. Chana is the mother of the prophet Samuel. Okay? And do you know the story of Chana? I'm not going to get into it. If you know the story of Chana, she is barren, and there's a whole beautiful story. This story is the Haftorah.
It's beautiful.
Of the day, on the day of Yom Kippur, we read the story of Chana and her surrender, how she goes to the temple in her time. She goes to the temple to pray for a child, and is totally in a state of surrender, where the high priest of the time thinks that she might be drunk, or she might be high on something, because she's davening like that, and he sees her from a distance, and she's speaking to herself, so he thinks that she's a little off. So she becomes in scripture as the representative energy of total constriction, total surrender to God. I will do anything if you grant me a child, and she is granted a child.
But she made
sorry?
But she made an agreement she would turn the child over to God.
Later to be the prophet Samuel, who she at the time says, if I am granted a child, and this is all part of her hodness. She says, if you grant me a child, I am in total surrender to you. I will actually surrender this child and his destiny to you too. He will be in his lifetime, and I will train him so to be this person of that lives in the surrender zone. And eventually he becomes the prophet Samuel. So Hod, in today's vernacular, Hod means that we exercise our ability to yield and to step back. To yield and to step back. The golden calf is in front of Aaron. He yields and he steps back. He does not throw the 10 Commandments on their heads. He yields and steps back. A little bit like Freud. What does that mean to yield and to step back? This is what it means. It means to be able to remove one's ego from a particular situation. To diminish the unbelievable force of the ego from a situation and to carry on from that egoless or diminished ego place, which means I am leaving room. My ego takes over my entire self. The world revolves right now around me and only me. To yield and to remove oneself means I am diminishing the power of ego and I am leaving room open for someone or something else. To be in the Hod zone and to be yielding also means I'm able to stand back and inwardly, all this is happening inside, in the inside, inwardly sense how things fit together. And therefore, I would also add how things fit together, how things can fit together, how cells are able to start talking to each other and cooperating, how humans are able to start talking. And so another word for surrender is also, through the act of surrendering, I am also automatically integrating myself into other human beings or into another environment. The ability to integrate. Are you starting to like Hod? Is the process of integration easy? Is it easy?
No.
Work.
It's extremely
Hard.
difficult work.
It's a compromise.
Yeah, I was going to use that word, but some people don't like that word. I like that word. Some people don't like that word. But I love that word. We don't have time. If we had a few more sessions, I would afford ourselves the luxury of getting into that word compromise, because compromise, whoever doesn't like the word